What if 4 drones, each costing just $18,000, could destroy $200 million worth of Russian oil and electronics before anyone even knew they were coming? 3:47 a.m. Temperature 3 degrees Celsius, wind speed 12 kilometers per hour. Perfect silence over western Russia. The radar screens glowed green, steady, then flickered. 4 objects, moving at 410 kilometers per hour, just 120 meters above the ground. No transponders, no signals, ghosts. Within 90 seconds, those ghosts would erase 40% of Moscow's fuel supply, ignite 160,000 tons of crude oil, and paralyze Russia's main semiconductor plant 600 kilometers inside its borders. This isn't fiction. It's precision warfare disguised as nothing, where corner reflectors become decoys, and $5 algorithms outsmart multi-million-dollar missiles. Before we dive in, hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and join the front line of modern warfare analysis. Because tonight, we're stepping into a battlefield where silence, data, and deception rewrite the rules of power. If you were the commander on that radar screen, would you fire or freeze? 3:47 a.m. Somewhere above Ryazan, Russia, the sky looked perfectly still. No radar alarms, no lights, no sound. But at that very moment, 4 objects were cutting through the darkness at 410 kilometers per hour, skimming the treetops like silent blades. They weren't missiles, at least not in the traditional sense. They were Ukrainian UJ-27 Beavers, compact carbon fiber drones designed to look like shadows and fly lower than radar could see. Inside the S-400 control bunker, the radar operator noticed something strange, 4 faint echoes moving in perfect formation. Birds, he thought, but birds don't climb 800 meters in 2 seconds. His commander had 14 seconds to decide whether to fire. Each interceptor missile cost $1.9 million, each drone less than $20,000. For 10 seconds, he hesitated. For the last 4, he panicked. 2, 4, 8, and 6 DM missiles erupted from their silos, accelerating to Mach 6 inches 3 seconds, slicing upward into the fog. But as they climbed, the drones dove, dropping to 150 meters, vanishing beneath the radar horizon. The missiles, blinded without radar illumination, detonated 90 meters above empty fields, scattering 24,000 fragments into nothing but air. Then, it happened. At 3 hours, 52 minutes and 17 seconds, the lead Beaver reached its mark, Tank Farm 17, holding 160,000 tons of crude oil. The impact didn't sound like an explosion. It sounded like the Earth exhaling. A column of fire rose 250 meters high, bright enough to be seen from 300 kilometers away. The other 3 drones followed in sequence, striking control towers and pipeline junctions with surgical precision. Within 90 seconds, the horizon turned into a furnace. Moscow's largest refinery was engulfed in a storm of flame that would burn for 72 hours. For the first time in the war, Russia's sky didn't belong to Russia anymore. Inside the S-400 command cabin, the air was heavy with static and sweat. The clock read 3 hours 47 minutes and 11 seconds a.m., 14 seconds that would decide whether Moscow's fuel supply survived the night. On the operator's screen, the unknown contacts looked too clean, too stable, flying at 410 kilometers per hour with no transponder, no IFF code. Probably decoys, one technician muttered. But the signals weren't flickering. They were climbing. At 52 kilometers from target, the lead object suddenly rose to 920 meters. That one maneuver shattered every assumption. The missile guidance officer froze. His computer estimated 41 seconds until the drones reached the radar dead zone, a 2-kilometer bubble where no surface-to-air missile could lock on. His training manual said, "Wait for positive identification." But logic screamed the opposite. He had 10 seconds left. Each interceptor cost $1.9 million, each delay 1 refinery. 8 seconds. He requested confirmation. Silence. 5 seconds. The commander's voice finally broke. Fire. 2, 4, 8, and 6 DM interceptors ignited, launching upward with 240,000 newtons of thrust, reaching Mach 5.8 inches under 3 seconds. Outside, the night sky split open with twin spears of light, but the drones responded instantly. All 4 nosedived at a 30 degrees angle, dropping to 120 meters, vanishing below radar horizon. The missiles, dependent on ground radar illumination, lost their paint. Their guidance went blind. The onboard computer tried to predict the last known position but failed. The warheads detonated 80 meters above ground, releasing 190 kilograms of tungsten fragments into empty air. For 6 seconds, silence returned. Then the operator saw the impossible. The echoes reappeared, now just 18 kilometers from the refinery, moving faster, 462 kilometers per hour, low enough to hug the power lines. 4 blips, steady and deliberate, he whispered, almost to himself. They're not drones, they're ghosts. And by the time the next alert sounded, the sky over Ryazan had already turned red. 3 hours, 52 minutes and 17 seconds a.m. The refinery's night shift cameras caught what looked like a sunrise made of metal. The first explosion tore through Tank Farm 17, a circular reservoir holding 160,000 tons of crude oil. Within 2 seconds, the blast wave ignited the vapor cloud hanging over the tanks. In 3 more, the temperature spiked to 1,950 degrees Celsius, hot enough to liquefy structural steel. The second drone struck Pump Station 4, where hundreds of cubic meters of pressurized fuel surged through titanium pipes. The impact split the manifold, sending fire into the sky like a jet engine. Sensors registered a pressure drop of 70 bars in under 10 milliseconds. The emergency shutoff failed before it could even blink. By 3:53 a.m., 3 more detonations followed in sequence. The drones weren't random. They were programmed to create a chain reaction and engineered inferno. Each strike was timed to coincide with fuel circulation cycles, amplifying combustion at the exact moment the pumps rotated to maximum flow. Within 90 seconds, flames covered 3.2 square kilometers, a field of fire visible from the outskirts of Moscow, 280 kilometers away. Inside the S-400 bunker, the radar operators watched their screens fade to white from thermal interference. The sensors were overwhelmed. Too much heat, too much light, too many targets. What was once Russia's most secure energy hub had become an unrecognizable vortex of fire. At 3 hours, 54 minutes and 48 seconds, a final explosion collapsed the central pipeline tower, throwing molten debris 400 meters into the air. The shockwave shattered windows across Ryazan. The refinery's output, nearly 42% of the capital's fuel supply, vanished in under 2 minutes. For the first time, even the Russian command admitted what their screens already knew. The battlefield had expanded into the sky itself. 4:03 a.m. While fire crews in Ryazan still fought a losing battle against the burning refinery, radar screens 470 kilometers away at Novokuybishevsk began to light up. 12 new contacts were inbound, moving at 420 kilometers per hour, hugging the tree line. Russia's second-largest refinery had been placed under triple air defense coverage. 3 Pantsir S-1 batteries arranged in a perfect triangle, each overlapping the other's radar field. Theoretically, it was impenetrable. At first, everything seemed routine. Then, without warning, 4 drones climbed to 600 meters, fully exposing themselves to radar. The fire control system immediately flagged them as high-priority cruise missiles, their radar signatures identical to KH-100 in 1 second. The classification alert flashed red. Cruise missile swarm detected. Within seconds, 24 57 E-6 interceptor missiles launched skyward, each worth nearly $400,000. 12 seconds later, the sky above the refinery filled with sonic booms and streaks of light. To the operators, it looked like victory until the echoes began to multiply. 4 became 8. 8 became 16. What they didn't know was that each climbing drone was dropping corner reflectors, thin aluminum triangles that bounced radar energy straight back, creating dozens of false missiles. The system's computers were chasing ghosts. Over $9 million worth of missiles detonated harmlessly against thin air. And while the spectacle unfolded above, the real attack came from below. 8 UJ-22 drones, flying at just 50 meters altitude, slipped in from the west. The blind angle of the Pantsir's fixed phased array radar. Rotating the 3,000-kilogram turret to cover the rear required 4.7 seconds, 4 seconds too late. At 4 hours, 4 minutes and 51 seconds, 3 drones struck the refinery's compression hubs. 2 more hit storage tanks. The resulting blast wave flattened an area the size of 20 football fields. While Russian radar celebrated phantom victories, in the sky, the ground beneath them was already on fire. 4:18 a.m. In the region of Voronezh, 6 UJ-26 Beaver drones streaked across the sky, their autopilots steady, their GPS locked. Then, without warning, every navigation screen went dark. The signal bars vanished, coordinates froze. The drones were blind, A Krasuka 4 electronic warfare vehicle had just powered on. Its antennas unfolded like steel flowers, releasing a torrent of electromagnetic noise across 0.1 to 18 gigahertzes. Each unit produced 800 watts of directed jamming, roughly 32 trillion times stronger than a GPS signal traveling from satellites 20,000 kilometers away. For the drones, it was like trying to whisper through a hurricane. The autopilot switched to inertial navigation, depending on gyroscopes that drifted 0.08 degrees per minute. After an hour's flight, the potential error exceeded 200 meters, enough to miss the target completely. The drones began overheating as their CPUs processed blind corrections. Internal temperatures rose past 95 degrees Celsius. To survive, the software shut down non-essential systems, navigation lights, telemetry transmitters, radar receivers, saving just 7 watts in total, enough to lower heat by 2 degrees Celsius. At 4 hours 19 minutes and 42 seconds, one drone found a pattern in the darkness. Its optical sensor detected 3 storage tanks casting overlapping shadows under floodlights. By comparing the triangular geometry of those shadows, the onboard algorithm triangulated the refinery's coordinates within 3.8 meters. But it couldn't share the data. The radio spectrum was flooded. Then, by chance, frequency-hopping spread spectrum saved them. The lead drone's transmitter jumped across 1,000 frequencies per second, slipping through a 1 millisecond gap on channel 847. A fragment of 128 bytes, just position and timing, reached the other 5. At 4 hours 20 minutes and 6 seconds, all 6 drones adjusted course simultaneously. The first struck where steel met concrete, the weakest thermal joint. The impact triggered a chain reaction of fuel vapor ignitions, engulfing 5 hectares in seconds. The jammers silenced the air, but the fire spoke louder. 4:44 a.m. 2 modified UJ-26 Beavers were still in the air, flying deeper into Russian territory than any drone in history. Their targets lay in Penza, more than 630 kilometers from the border. Under normal conditions, they should have run dry hours ago. But these weren't ordinary machines. Ukrainian engineers had stripped away 5 kilograms of explosive to install auxiliary fuel tanks, extending their range to 980 kilometers with a 30-minute reserve. For 20 minutes, a Su-35 interceptor had been hunting them from behind, its Irbis-E radar running in narrow-beam tracking mode at 20 kilowatts. At 43 kilometers, it achieved lock. The pilot fired 2 R-7.71 missiles, each traveling at Mach 4, guided by autonomous Argon 9B-1348 seekers. The first missile detonated 90 meters short, shredding one drone into aluminum fragments. The second found its mark, punching through the wing of the surviving Beaver. Half its stabilizer was gone. Fuel leaked in a thin vapor trail. Yet the drone kept flying, dropping to 120 meters altitude, stabilizing just long enough to make a final correction. The target, Penza microelectronics plant, a restricted industrial complex producing semiconductors for Russian missile guidance systems. Inside were 8 ion implantation units, 4 lithography chambers, and $60 million in precision equipment. At 4 hours 46 minutes and 11 seconds, the wounded Beaver struck the main fabrication hall at 73 meters per second. The 15-kilogram warhead wasn't massive, but the chain reaction was. The explosion ruptured the cleanroom filters designed for 0.3 micron particles. Within seconds, the environment filled with silica dust, destroying months of calibration. In 12 seconds, Russia's primary military chip production was paralyzed for at least half a year. The total cost of the Ukrainian raid, $420,000. The estimated damage, over $200 million, but the real cost was invisible. The moment the Russian command realized that nowhere, not even 600 kilometers inside their borders, was truly safe. By sunrise, the smoke over Ryazan could be seen from orbit. The firestorm had devoured 3 refineries, crippled 2 regional depots, and silenced one of Russia's most secure electronic plants. 16 drones, total cost $420,000, had rewritten the limits of warfare, exposing what billions in steel and radar could not defend: the blind spots of arrogance. For 72 hours, fuel pipelines hissed and cracked like dying veins. Engineers dug through melted steel, searching for control valves that no longer existed. And somewhere deep in a military bunker, a general stared at a radar screen full of ghosts, realizing the enemy had turned mathematics, timing, and silence into weapons. But this story isn't about victory or defeat. It's about the future of warfare. where a handful of algorithms can shape entire economies, and one pilotless machine can make nations rethink what safe really means. So, I'll ask you, if small drones can strike 630 kilometers deep, what happens when autonomy, AI, and deception evolve even further? Would you still trust the radar? Would you still believe in borders? Tell me what you think below. How would you defend against an invisible swarm? If this story gripped you, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more deep cinematic war stories. Because on this channel, we don't just tell battles, we dissect the technology, psychology, and strategy behind them. Stay tuned for the next operation, where silence isn't peace, it's the sound of something unstoppable approaching.